Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan for 18 years. But today, no preamble, no self-promotion. Let's just go right to Kyoto. The purpose of this video is to share with you ways that you can have a peaceful, romantic, beautiful Kyoto experience. One where you're not constantly fighting other tourists and crowds of people. I'm going to give you some advice, some tips, and I'm going to share with you two of my favorite places that I usually go when I go to Kyoto that will not be so crowded and you can have some moments to relax. So stick around until the end. I'm going to have my recommendations at the end of the video. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of advice is timing. Timing is really important. First, an obvious one. Don't go to Kyoto on Saturday and Sunday, the weekend, and do a little research before you come to Japan to find out if there's any national holidays that are going on. During public holidays, that's when the Japanese will be traveling, and so you don't want to be fighting hordes of Japanese tourists at the same time you're fighting the hordes of foreign tourists. Alright, with that sort of obvious tip out of the way, I'm going to give you a perhaps less obvious tip, and that is when you plan your Japan itinerary, go to Kyoto first. Many people come to Tokyo first because they fly into Tokyo, etc., and then they do several days in Tokyo, and then they head out to Kyoto after that. I recommend that you reverse that. Why? Because if you're coming from North or South America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, any place where you're going to have jet lag, use this jet lag to your advantage. Go to Kyoto first and wake up early. The jet lag is going to have you up at 3 or 4 a.m. anyways. You might as well take advantage of it. And the truth is, there really is nothing at all in Tokyo that you need to wake up early for. But in Kyoto, there is plenty. To illustrate this, let's just head to Fushimi Inari right now. As you can see from the footage, there's barely anyone there. I'm not entirely alone, but it was no problem at all to get the photos and the videos that I wanted without worrying about anyone stumbling into the frame. I got there by taking the first train I possibly could, which was about 5:20, and I was going through the first Torii gate at 5:45. This is actually another part of the recommendation. Try to plan your hotel stay in a strategic place. I was able to catch a train at Sanjo Station that goes straight to Fushimi Inari with no transfers, and so it was very easy to get there, and it was early enough that, again, there's barely anyone there. And it is a magical place, as you can see, that becomes a little less magical as more and more people show up. By the time I was leaving, It was just before 7, and as you can see from this footage, well, it's starting to get a little bit crowded. One final thing to mention about Fushimi Inari is that it's actually worth it, even if you're there at a crowded time, to walk the entire hill. You see, most tourists who go there, they go to the main shrine at the bottom, they head to the place where the torii gates branch off into those two distinct paths, and then that's about as far as they go. A number of people will go on from that, but most people do not. So if you are relatively mobile, decently in shape, it's not like hiking a mountain, but it is walking up a very large hill. But what's nice about it is that it's so vast that it's much easier to find places that you can take interesting photos and videos, and there's lots of little side tracks that you can go off on. Basically, it's possible to get lost and get interesting shots and not always be worried about whether you're going to have lots of other tourists in the frame. And here's the thing, it's not just Fushimi Inari. So many of the other wonderful places that people love in Kyoto can be accessed early in the morning because they don't have an open or closing time. And here's the truth, there's so many other attractions in Kyoto that can be reached early in the morning and will be completely magical because people haven't woken up and gone there yet. Kiyomizu-dera, the Arashiyama Bamboo Forest, Ninen and Sannenzaka. All of these places will be absolutely beautiful. You have that gorgeous golden dawn light, and it'll feel like the place is all yours. And that makes the Kyoto experience that much more magical. Here is some footage from the next morning when again I woke up shortly after 4 and I walked around Gion. Again, beautiful, quiet, wonderful, wonderful place, and to have it all to yourself is truly magical. And look, if you live in Japan or you're coming from Australia or Asia and you're not going to be jet lagged like people from Europe and North America, etc., well, it's still worth it to wake up this early. I was up relatively late on both the Friday and the Saturday night, and it was still completely worth it to wake up that early and walk around these places. I have one more piece of advice in terms of timing, and that is you can actually go to some of the places where you have to pay entry, such as Kinkakuji and Ginkakuji, and still have the place relatively to yourself. I did this a few years ago at Ginkakuji, the Silver Pavilion. What I did was I entered at 3:55 p.m., which was 5 minutes before closing, and all I did was hang back. The crowds filtered on through, no one else was being let in anymore, and pretty soon I was able to take photos like this. So that's the other tip. Go just before closing, and it's not like there's staff there that's trying to rush you through the experience. That's not the case. You will be able to take a little bit of time to relax and wait and get the shots that you want, or perhaps more importantly, the atmosphere that you want and really want to experience when in Kyoto. So with the talk about timing out of the way, I want to get into my next bit of advice, which is simply walk the city. You see, there's this list of places that all of the tourists go. and it's almost like a checklist. Kiyomizudera, Arashiyama, Kinkakuji, etc. There's so much more to Kyoto. I recommend just walking because, first of all, it's laid out in a grid system. It's not confusing like Tokyo or Yokohama, for example. All the streets are north, south, east, west. And by just walking through this city with thousands of years of history, you're going to stumble across historical markers of interest. You're going to pass all kinds of fun, cute boutique cafes, shops, restaurants, etc. You're going to find lovely shrines and temples in all of the neighborhoods as you go through, including giant ones like Nishihonganji, which is where I wandered into this time. I had never been there, and it just happened to be on the street that I was walking, and lo and behold, there's this beautiful place with national treasure designated halls, and once again, it's 10:30 a.m. and there's barely anyone here. And I was the only non-Japanese person there at the time. This is despite it being a Saturday and there are hordes and hordes of foreign tourists. It's kind of like visiting a cathedral in Europe, except it's a Buddhist temple hall. And finally, I'm going to give to you my 2 recommendations of places that I go and there's often not many tourists there at all. The first is Toji. Toji is just south of Kyoto Station. It is walkable, probably take you about 15 minutes to get there. It's got the tallest pagoda in Japan, and different from the other pagodas you might see on your journey, it's one that you can actually go inside. But for me, the attraction of Toji is in the hall where they have these 4 statues that were burnt in a fire several hundred years ago. And they're giant guardian deity statues, and they radiate this sort of power and presence that I find awe-inspiring every time I see them. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to take footage when you're in there, so I'm probably putting a photo here somewhere, but they're definitely worth checking out because I don't believe in power stones and power spots and things like that, but those statues definitely have a power. In fact, the way they were damaged in the fire only enhances that feeling. The second place I'm going to recommend is the place that I will take any of my foreign guests if I happen to play tour guide in Kyoto. And I discovered it on accident, one-day conference that I was in Kyoto for. This temple was next to the conference site and I checked it out and fell in love. The place is called Shokokuji, and it has this amazing main hall, and on the ceiling of the main hall is a dragon painting. And the dragon painting has this optical illusion that not only do the eyes follow you when you walk around the hall, but it actually appears that the head and neck uncoil and follow you as you walk. And when you stand in a designated area and clap your hands, there's this amazing echo that's supposed to be the roar of the dragon. When I was there this time, I was by myself. The only other person in the place was this gentleman who works there and basically tells you where to stand to hear the roar. So I'm in this 14th century temple that has this amazing art and history, and I'm the only one there. When I was there for the conference, I was there in the autumn, and in the autumn they have a special rock and sand garden, a Zen garden that is open. Unfortunately, it wasn't open in the spring, so I couldn't get any footage of it today. I have some photos from my previous visit. If you're there in the autumn, I sat there for about 20 minutes in contemplation during my lunch break, and I was the only one there. So you can fight the crowds at Ryoanji, at that Zen garden, or you can fight the crowds at Kiyomizudera, the gardens at Nijojo Castle, or you could come to Shokokuji and have the place to yourself. Unfortunately, they don't allow photos or video of the dragon. I picked up a postcard. It looks like this. but you can't recreate the optical illusion with a postcard, unfortunately. So there are my pieces of advice and tips. Go to Kyoto first, plan the timing of your visits to these various places. It's possible to go to the really popular places and have no people there as long as you go early in the morning or right before close. Also, find your own Kyoto. Walk the city and find some spots that speak to you, that spark your interest, and that you end up having a unique story when you go back and talk about your trip in Japan. You're not going to have the same Instagram photos that everyone else gathers when they visit the city of Kyoto. Find your own Kyoto, and I really want to thank you for watching this particular video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you got some ideas. And if you're wondering why I would share my secret places, because maybe that will make thundering herds of tourists go there as well, well, I'm not so very worried. First of all, I'm a very small channel. And second of all, there's always more secret places to discover. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.